Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Shooting the with Yankee. As always, I'm Yankee, so let's start shooting. Tonight, I guess I'm going to try to get canceled because I just decided I want to talk about a topic that's a little more serious tonight. I want to talk about why gun crime, gun violence, and I know it's not gun violence or gun crime, it's just crime and violence, but the other side likes to label it as gun violence so often. Let's address the issue. Why does gun violence affect minorities at such a disproportionate rate? Why is a small portion of society have a lot of the crime, a disproportionate amount of the negative things with firearms? Unfortunately, this is a topic that we get beat over the head with all the time as gun owners and people who believe in freedom with, the minority communities are in, disarray and they live in terror and all this stuff, and the crime rates are so much higher there and all this other stuff. But then they do it in such a way that if you try to discuss why that is, well, then you're a racist because, you're a white guy talking about race. Well, you're beating us over the head with a topic, but then telling us we can't address the topic or else we're racist. And I get so tired of that because I think most people who know me know I'm not a racist, no more so than the most people. In fact, I would say I'm way less racist than most people. And that includes most minorities because, racism isn't just held by the prominent group, but I don't consider myself a racist person. I like to think that I am smart enough to not let those tendencies rule me, those natural tendencies. So I want to talk about the problem and I want to hear what you all think. Why does gun crime disproportionately affect minorities? And yes, it is about financial wealth. It does have a factor in it. People that grow up poor, well, you have less opportunities. A lot of times crime becomes the only way you can actually make a living. But, I grew up very poor, grew up around a lot of poor people. We didn't commit a lot of gun violence. It wasn't a big thing. If someone did commit gun violence, it was usually against their spouse. So there's more to it than just being poor. There's generational poverty, but that exists in lots of groups. And not every group, not every minority falls to the same problem. Let's face it, it's usually blacks and Hispanics that have most of the problem with gun violence. It's not even Asian minorities or Pakistan, Middle Eastern or whatever minority group that comes and, lives in a special area. They don't all have the same problems. So I think you have to address the root issues of why certain communities have disproportionate problems with violence. And it's, like I said, it is got to do with generational poverty. When you're poor, you don't have a lot of options, but it's also got to do with culture. I mean, look at rap culture over the last 30, 40 years, that it's really existed. It glorifies being a gangster. It glorifies being a criminal. It glorifies everything negative. It portrays guns in every negative fashion. If you mimic the rappers and their fake personas that were made for them by record companies, well, you're going to be a thug. And that's very prominent in certain communities. Also, you got the problems of families not being together. And that puts a big strain. And I'm not saying someone needs a mom and a dad. Someone needs a mom that's there or a dad that's there. That's not there all the time physically, but is there for them. And a lot of people grow up without that nowadays. And it is better to have both or two moms or two dads, especially if one of them is always there. Those kids do the best. That's why you don't see that same problems in Asian communities as much as you do in Black or Hispanic communities, and why you see it less in Hispanic communities than you do Black communities. Because Black communities, one of the cultures a lot of the men have taken to is that, I got my 20 babies with 20 women, so I'm a man. That's not a good mindset to have. But that's really become part of the culture. I was walking through the mall one day, and a guy come walking to me, and he's got like his 2-year-old walking him. And the 2-year-old is dressed like a pimp. And on his shirt, it says future pimp. I'm like, that's what you got your kid aspiring to be, a pimp? Not future president or, future lawyer or wildlife preservationist, future pimp. And that's a problem with a lot of poor cultures, and especially true in now the Black culture and somewhat in the Hispanic culture. You don't see it in the Asian cultures as bad, where you see more generational living, where there's more parents, more family members there. There's a better support system. And that's one of the things we need to address is the support system, the families, etc. It needs to be made to be where people take being parents more seriously. People take marriage more seriously. People take their responsibility to their kids more seriously. One of the things I will not tolerate for someone is when they start making excuses to me why they don't pay their child support. Like, oh, the mama's, she spends it on herself. I don't give a fuck. Pay the child support. And then if you got a problem with how they're spending it, take them back to court. Show how they're spending it. But pay your fucking child support, support your children. But unfortunately nowadays, that doesn't seem to be what people aspire to. They aspire to be pimps and rappers and the original gangsters and thugs. And that has had a negative effect on culture, especially when you're in a poor neighborhood, a poor society where you don't have a lot of options anyway. And becoming a bad guy is very appealing. Also, you see the negative in a lot of these cultures. That is also bad. It's like the grandma in the poor household who's like, anybody that's got a gun must be a criminal. They don't accept guns. So they grow up in a society where everybody who has a gun is a bad guy. So they never learn the values of guns, the responsibility of gun ownership, any of those things. Just you're a criminal if you have one, so you might as well act like a criminal. So it's attitudes, it's money, it's family units, it's all kinds of things. And until we stop saying, oh, well, we're going to have these programs in these Black communities to reduce crime by having them turn guns in for gift certificates to Best Buy, that's not going to solve a problem. That's not going to change culture. That's not going to change socioeconomic standards. We need to start changing things to where people have more support, more opportunities. When a kid gets out of school at 3:00 in the afternoon, his mom's working till 9, he doesn't just have to go hang out on the streets where he's bullied into doing bad things. He can go to after-school programs. He can go to vocational training. He can go to all kinds of things. He can go join a preservationist group that's, helps kids have things to do after school. And maybe have childcare services available for people who couldn't otherwise afford it. That would be a big help right there. So people aren't leaving their babies unattended or with bad people during the day because they have no other choice. So we need to start dealing with the problems at the root level, at the ground. Why are people thinking that it's better to be a bad guy than a good guy? Why are people thinking it's important to have multiple children with multiple women and not pay for them? Where's that idea coming from? We got to find where that idea comes from, get rid of it. In any culture, there's white people do it too, but it's huge in the Black culture. I can't talk about how many rap videos do you know of where they talk about how many baby mamas they have. It's awful. That has come from that. And that has come from, like I said, generations of poverty, systemic discrimination, etc. We need to get rid of the systemic discrimination. And we also need to stop pretending that it's just applying to Black people, Asian people, Hispanic people, because it applies to the working class. We live in a society now where race doesn't really matter that much. It's your class. If you're not part of the 1%, well, then you're working class. You're either working class or poor working class. But what matters is that you're working class. And they don't want working class to ever crawl out of that ditch. They want them to stay working class. They want you to always just have barely enough money to pay for your mortgage and possibly have a four-wheeler or maybe a boat, but not enough money to do any damage or to where you could ever quit working or anything like that, or you could actually have a say in something. So it's less about race nowadays than it is class. But we have to be able to address the issues in culture as well, because you can't just say it's poverty, because you can look at poverty and you can see, well, here's 4 different poverty groups. This one has a far bigger problem with gun violence and gang violence, etc. You can't just say it's, where they live, because you'll see people who live in the same neighborhoods and this ethnic group won't have the same problems this ethnic group is. You have to get down to the root causes. And unfortunately, we live in a society now where you talk about the root causes, you're a racist, especially if you're white. And I hate to break it to them. I grew up as poor as pretty much any Black person out there grew up. And I didn't have a lot of black friends growing up because there weren't a lot of black people in our town. But once I got into the military, I met lots and lots of black families and black people and found, the culture is different. There is different things that certain groups latch onto that other groups don't, etc. There's different family values in different groups. We need to start addressing that. And the main thing, I think, is children not having chances, children not having opportunities, children not having resources, children not having parents, children thinking that being a pimp is better than being an attorney. Those kinds of things need to stop being the common thought. And until we start addressing those things, no amount of gun laws are going to change it. And I know I turned this into a video and went on a really big rant right now. So I'm going to go over and read what other people say, see what they got to say about the subject. Edgar Cortez said, increasingly more children are growing up without a father. That's one of the things I just talked on. And I don't like the word father being used there. I just like parent, because kids do great with two mothers as well. Particularly with minorities, this frequently leads to more poverty and lack of boundaries on behavior. The children often get educated by the streets. Yeah, that was one of the things talked on. You don't see that as much in Asian communities. They live in family groups. They do generational living, which I'm a big fan of generational living. The whole notion that generational living is a bad thing, like if your kids don't move out at 18, they're failures. Well, that's you being a puppet of industrial capitalism, where they require exponential growth. So every family, if all four of you stay, if you're a family couple and you have two kids and all four of you stay in the same home for most of your life, well, we've only sold one couch, one TV, one house, one car. But if you split up and the two kids go their other direction, that's 3 houses, 3 cars, 3 TVs. And then when they split up to more, that's more. That's what they count on. They want you to move out and have to go into debt so that you work it off the rest of your life and that you buy more stuff. They don't want you using your parents' assets that are already there that you can take over when you get older. Like my kids can live here now with me. And then when I get too old to take care of myself, I can be in an ADU unit out here in the side yard and they can take over the home. They don't want you doing that. You don't use enough resources. And once again, I'm getting off on a rant. And before we go any further with my ranting, I want to remind everyone, if you want to support this channel, which I don't know why you would, especially after this conversation, but subscribe and turn on all notifications and make sure notifications are turned on your channel. You can do it on this video, or you can go to my YouTube page. I'll put a link in the upper corner. You can go and subscribe. Also, if you want to support the channel in any way financially, support the things we do like the Pets and Vets program, the Friends program, TYMP, go on over to my website, tympistolproject.com. There's a link there where you can go buy merchandise like Real Men Shoot Their Feelings, and dozens of other designs over there. You'll find something you like. So go over there and buy some merch, support the channel, or become a Patreon member or a Subscribe Star member. That's the better ways to support the channel. It's $2 a month. You'll never notice it, but it'll help out with helping a lot of pets, etc. So go on over there, help us continue the good works we've been doing. I appreciate it. So thank you very much. Also, if you want to buy some custom patches, go over to Ailla and Anchor. But you'll get some if you join up for Patreon and Subscribe Star. But let's get back to the questions here. Go Shadow said, minorities usually don't have the money to pay someone else to do their violence. That's true. The wealthy class, they always have someone else to do the violent deeds. And usually the poor people, they manipulate them. They you don't think the 1% are pulling the strings on riots and protests and stuff like that? Of course they do. And all it takes is a couple of agitators put into a crowd, even if people are trying to do the right thing. It takes a couple of agitators in a crowd to throw a brick at a police officer, and then there you go. Something for the evening news to keep people scared and divided and angry. Mr. Furley said population and poverty, inner cities have lots of. Yes, they do. Lots of population, lots of poverty. That's why I said we need to put more emphasis on being parents and the importance of it and how it's something you shouldn't jump into. You shouldn't be a parent while you're still a child. That's why I always don't like to make the fight that 18-year-olds should have guns. I like to make the fight, well, no one should do anything till they're 21. You should be able to join the military. any of that stuff. Maybe people should start having kids a little later in life. This whole, well, we got to do it when we're 14 so that we can propagate the species and keep the working class fully funded is garbage. Sean Bain, it is several factors. Socioeconomic, the only way out is with a gang and a gun. Lack of opportunity for social advancement. Yes, we need more stuff. Like we always talk about how we have a shortage of this and a shortage of that in this country. Well, why don't we start having programs where kids in high school can go after school to these programs and learn for free? You know, I've known kids growing up poor. I knew kids who wanted to do things like be an electrician or anything like that. And I had one friend, you know, from vocational school who wanted to be an electrician, but the vocational school stopped paying for the training for people. So it was like, you know, $1,500 to go get your certification. And, you know, that might not sound like a lot, but back then you might as well have told the kid, you know, you just got to jump over the Empire State Building and you'll get your certification. Because it was about as likely they'd do that as they would have $1,500. You know, so it's just, why aren't those things available? If we've got a shortage for them, there should be a reason to fund it, to keep those spots filled. Mikey D, too many single parent homes, gangs, not enough proper guidance, upbringing kind of baked into the culture and how it's portrayed on TV and movies. It is very much baked into the culture. And unfortunately, that's the main part we aren't allowed to touch. You know, you're a racist if you talk about a flaw in a cultural system. And we got flaws in our white culture, what little culture we have. But, you know, it's not racist to talk about that. Look, I think one of the biggest flaws in white culture is, hey, as long as your team is winning and there's beer in the fridge, why should you worry about anything else? That's one of the major things that's wrong with us. And I know that white people, black people are all the same, but our socioeconomic and our social cultural cues are all different. You don't got a lot of black people watching lacrosse. Let's just say that. Or a lot of rich people watching wrestling. And yes, parents are the one of the main things. Like you said, we need more parent involvement. You don't even got to be married and live in the same home, but take responsibility for your kids. A mom and a dad that both take responsibility for their kids, but they live in different homes, well, the kids do fine. In fact, they do better that way than a mom and dad who fight all the time. But kids with single parents struggle. Kids with two parents do so much better than kids with one parent. And even statistically, kids with two mommies do better than anybody if they have a stable upbringing. Excuse me. So it's not about a man in their life. It's about a strong parental figure in their life. So, yeah, we need more parents that actually take parenting serious. A nominal snowman said, opined in an email about the topic. It is long, though. He did go on long. He said, institutional racism created a system of poverty for minorities. This creates a distrust in the system and desperation, which leads to all the issues of a low trust and impoverished society. Violence and crime is par for the course. Guns are just a tool that is used to perpetuate this lifestyle. Yeah, it's like I say, I met so many black families as I got older and like in the military and stuff. And it's like, yeah, my grandmother disowned me if she knew I had a gun. She'd think I was in a gang. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Look at how the Nigerian movement was squashed by the state powers. Look at how the 60s black community split from white society with civil rights and tried to build their communities only to be collapsed by U.S. government interference with drugs and police violence. Well, that once again comes to racism and classism and all this other stuff. Racism has slowly been replaced with classism. Back in the day, it was more racism. Now it's more classism. And anybody that's seen as the lower class has got to be kept in control. And anytime they start to stabilize the society, stabilize themselves as a people, well, the powers that be, that's a threat to their authority. That's a threat to the status quo. So they have to squash that. And we've seen that time and time again in our society. Read my comment in the chat. I can't find his comment in the chat. I don't know what he said in the chat. I've looked twice. I still don't see it. Andrew Avila, that was Jumping Killer Ox, by the way. Andrew Avila says, I think it's single parent families. Gangs give the youth a sense of belonging and a need to protect their territory through violence, plus the lack of opportunities for growth. It very much is. If you're in a family where your mother is either just a bad mom or maybe she's a good mom, but she works 2 jobs. I grew up, my mother working 2 jobs, sometimes 3. Never saw her. When I did see her, she was trying to sleep during the day because she worked, shitty jobs. So she did a lot of night shifts and evening shifts in bars and stuff. And in the daytime, she was trying to sleep. So we had to walk around on pins and needles being quiet. That really affects your relationship with your family. So parenting is a big thing. People have to have time to be a parent. And it usually takes 2 people. Now, I'm not saying people can't be successful from single parent families. I'm from a single parent family. I came out fine. All my brothers and sisters, I can't say that about. We had different circumstances. And, even though we were only separated by a wall in our house, our lives took very different paths. But all of us would have a better chance at doing better if we'd have had 2 parents, one of which had time to spend time with us and help us. My dad was worthless. Mad Dog. Generally, they are poor and poor people have crime committed against them. The government should subsidize guns for the poor. I would love that. I do wish I actually kind of do subsidize guns for the poor. I do TYMP. That's what that is. It's subsidizing guns for poor people who would otherwise just be victims. But you can't get people to get behind it because they act like, it's people getting something for nothing. Shut the fuck up. But yeah, that's absolutely true. Paul Rawlerson, all about hate, fear, drugs, and video games. Yeah, I don't know if video games have a big effect to it. I think, most people can separate video games from real life. Like they've done studies, I've read studies before where they take like 50 kids or 60 kids, 20 of them play violent video games. 20 of them read, regular literature. 20 of them roughhouse with, their dads and stuff for an hour. And then they put them out on a playground. And the kids that are the most aggressive are the ones that roughhoused with their dads for 20 minutes. Not the video game kids. In fact, they didn't really see much difference between the video game kids and the kids that read for an hour. It just didn't seem to change their behavior much, whereas physical roughhousing did. So don't know about the video games, but all the rest of it, yeah, definitely. Drugs are a big business. You got to have poor people to move your drugs. You got to have poor people to buy your drugs. I mean, how many people who aren't desperate get into drugs, except for people who are rich people who get spoiled and they have to find something to make them feel like they're alive. It's the 2 extremes of life. Edgar Cortez says, Yank, I respect your opinion, but after the age of 5, in my opinion, the father is the most important parent. The child who grows up with without a dad is really handicapped. I just don't see a lot of scientific evidence to support that. Like I said, if you look at children and they study children from families and see which ones are the most high achieving children, it's generally children with 2 mommies. That seems to be the most nurturing family environment. Kids with 2 dads also do better than kids with a mom and a dad. But I think that's mostly financial, because usually when you have 2 dads, you have 2 primary breadwinners and you have more opportunity financially. But the mother's one, that's not the case. Usually it's usually one major breadwinner. It's just that it's a more nurturing environment. And then the mom and dad ones, of course, that's way better than single parents. And, I remember some studies that did suggest that when kids are raised by just their father and not their mother, they're higher performing, but they're less happy. So there's lots of factors there. But having 2 parents definitely does make it better. And having a dad in your life, I think it has more of an effect on girls than boys. I think most boys can grow up and be men without ever actually having a good man in their life. I did it. But girls, I think, need a male influence more when they're younger, or else they grow up and they marry trash and they get involved with trash. We got one more person weighing in here, then we're done, which is good because we're really long today. I think it would help besides giving free guns to everyone is a healthy free breakfast and lunch at schools. A well-fed kid is a well-behaved kid. try convincing conservatives that kids should get free meals at school. For some reason, they just hate that. I don't know why. It seems to me like it's one of the no-brainers. When you send kids to school every day, you feed them, especially poor kids that can't eat. They can't afford to eat when they're not at school. They rely on school for their meals. They don't get breakfast and lunch at home. So just give free meals. And I'm not saying just to poor kids, just give free meals as part of the school. Just pay for it. Shut the fuck up. Stop giving Exxon big tax breaks. Stop giving, Elon Musk giant tax breaks and taxpayer giveaways. Fund the fucking schools. Give kids better opportunities. Give kids better after school opportunities. All that stuff. Feed the kids while they're there. It's like kids are the future, but I don't want to pay for it. So it pisses me off. But it's like everybody's pro-life until they're born, and then they don't give two shits about it. So, all right, that's it for today. Like I said, kind of a touchy topic today and all over the place. But thanks everybody who weighed in. I appreciate it. Sorry I rambled most of it because it's just something that pisses me off when we're always being beat over the head with this problem, but then we're never allowed to address it, or else we're racist. If we admit that black culture is different than white culture, then we're saying they're less than, and now you're a racist. No, we're saying that they have their problems. White culture has its problems. Hispanic culture has its problems. And if you don't deal with the root problems, just using those as an excuse to take away guns shouldn't be something we tolerate. So that's what this was about. So thanks everyone for coming. Thanks everyone for weighing in. I appreciate it. Hope to see y'all again tomorrow. Until then, remember, always carry and stay safe until I see you again.